Welcome to the MMA Fan Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Stu and Blake.
Hello and welcome to Blake Harrison. Let's say welcome to Blake Harrison. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm all right. I've not seen you for how long?
Well, I've missed about 3 episodes.
Yes.
You
yes.
did 3 episodes without me, cheated on me 3 times, but it was fair because I wasn't showing you the love and affection that you needed. I wasn't there for you.
No, you wasn't. And I just happened to fall into the arms of Scroobius Pip and Brian Lacey, and they were very considerate lovers.
Yeah. They were beautiful arms to fall into, weren't they?
They were. Pip's are very, very hairy. Well, look, welcome to the MMA show, everybody.
I think, let me just say, with Brian, I hope he doesn't mind me saying, the lovely man, but he's on the smaller side. I imagine you being the big spoon. But with Pip, you're both quite big lads.
It was bear versus bear, me and Pip.
You putting your fists together like that just made me throw up in my mouth. Anyone that's just listening to this, he was bear versus bear, but throwing his fists together in like it was furious passion.
It was a far more gentle affair with old Twink Lacey. That was lovely. That was lovely.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, lovely Lacey. They call him Lovely Lacey. But thank you, genuine thank you to Scroobius Pip and Brian Lacey for filling in for me when I couldn't be here. It was it's getting quite busy in old Australia filming.
Yeah,
but it's all
you've
done
been
now.
out of ages. Look at the colour of you.
You're such a shithead. I am, as always, as pale as the wall behind you. I am a ghost. But that is the annoying thing. Is like, first, I mean, I don't massively tan anyway, if I'm perfectly honest. But I do tan a little bit. But when you're out there filming, because of like continuity, you can't get a tan. I mean, the character has to be pale anyway. But like, even if the character didn't have to be pale, whatever your kind of skin tone is when you start the job, if by the end of the job you're much, much darker because of the sun, the film won't cut together. Because you'll be like, because you film things out of sequence as well. You do scene 1 might be in the middle of the movie, and the last scene might be the first thing you do. So your skin tone will be all over the shop, like from pale to dark to middle way to pale. Middle way, is that a skin tone? I don't know. Middle way. He looks very middle way. So you have to stay very, very pale. So I'm still as pale as I was pre-Australia.
Oh, well, it's good to have your pasty face back on this screen. And hopefully next time we'll be back in the studio and getting back to what we do best. So before we do anything, we should shout out Fat Candy because they're the sponsor of this show.
Fat Candy. I've been missing that. I haven't done that in weeks.
Felt like quite a release there, mate.
It was a release. Scroobius Pip did a very good job in my absence, but I needed to get it out.
Absolutely.
When you got a few backed up in the chamber after a few weeks of not being able to,
of course, mate.
Just let it loose.
Fantastic.
Fat Candy.
Use that discount code Sweet MMA to save yourself some money on some fantastic sweetie treats. They are freeze-dried sweets, and I urge you to go give them a follow on Instagram or TikTok, or head over to their website and go and check out all of your favourite sweets that you've had growing up. You can have them all, but in a completely unique way because they're freeze-dried, so they explode into these huge kind of puffs of sweetie goodness, and they're all available on their website. And just use that discount code SWEETMMA to save yourself some pennies. Right, Blake Harrison, so in the 3 weeks since you've not been on the show, so much has happened, and I just want to sort of touch on it. So to give the listeners a bit of sort of insight as to what today's show is going to be about, of course we're going to talk about Ian Garry at the weekend. I'd like to talk about the Ben Eubank fight a little, and we'll also look ahead to Sandhagen Figgy. But I just want to chat a little bit of shit with you about some of the stuff that I've spoke to Brian and Pip about in your absence. The fact that essentially I want to talk about Volk and I want to talk about Paddy, because they're the 2 big stories that have, dominated MMA for the last few weeks. And let's start first with former two-time guest of the show. I mean, I could say former two-time guest of the show for either Volk or Paddy because they've both been on twice.
Has Paddy been on three times or twice?
Might have been on 3 times actually. Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway.
But yeah, they're all there in the archive. Go check them out. Let's start with Paddy. I mean, where did you watch that event? Did you actually watch it live in Australia?
So I had finished filming, but my family had come out. So I was on my way to Sydney, and it was literally like I couldn't have timed it worse, the flight to Sydney from Brisbane. And I was in a cab watching it on my phone, the Paddy fight. And then when we got to the hotel, we checked in, and I made the entire family wait in the lobby with me. It was a nice lobby. It was a nice lobby.
You're
a little kids
terrible
area.
man, Blake.
I made them wait in the lobby with me so that I could watch, because the Volk fight had just started. I was like,
just sit
I don't
over
want
there,
to go
kids.
to the room yet.
Sit over there, kids, with your jet lag.
It's like, you know what it is? It's like they had to. There was no jet lag. They'd gone from Brisbane, Sydney. They'd been in Brisbane for like 2 years. There was no jet lag. I'm not a monster, but the room wasn't fully ready yet.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, let's just sit in the lobby and start watching Volks. Volk's about to start. And then the woman came out. I was like, oh, your room's ready now. About halfway through round 2. And I was like, guys, like, why don't we just get a drink? And like, you kids could just go in the play area. Just watch the rest of Volk. And also, I filmed something on my phone, hoping that Volk would get a knockout in the latter stages of the fight. Because as we were watching the fight in maybe like round 4 or 5, guess what comes over the speakers? I come from a land down under. And I was like, oh my God, if I'm in a bar or a lobby in Sydney and that song comes on and Volk gets the knockout to reclaim his belt, this is epic. Sadly, didn't get the knockout, but it was still a good moment. But yeah, so I watched the Paddy fight in the cab, and this cab driver, it wasn't an Uber, it was just like one of the metered cabs that you get going to airports. And I kept like looking at the phone, and he saw me watching stuff on the phone, and I could see the little sat nav in his corner say, oh yeah, 17 minutes away, 19 minutes away, 17 minutes away, 20 minutes away. And I'm like, you're going round and round in circles, just up in the meter, because you know I'm distracted because I'm watching the fight. So that's what happened during the Paddy fight. He was definitely taking us for a ride. And then I even spoke to the woman at the check-in a few days later about getting a cab to the airport to come back home. And she was like, oh, yeah, you're better off getting an Uber. Don't get one of those metered cabs, because we had someone the other day that had like $100 just from the airport to here. It should be half of that. I was like, yeah, I paid about $80. She was like, yeah,
wow.
you've been done over. So he was doing that. But anyway, very, very happy for Paddy. Very, very happy for Volk. Do you want to start with Paddy?
Yeah, I just thought it was just a fantastic performance.
It was a fantastic performance. It was a fantastic performance. A lot of people talking about it now, talking about how great Paddy's doing and all this stuff. And I am on board with how brilliant Paddy looked. He looked massive as well. He looked so like a good size for the weight class. You know, this is a man that has competed at featherweight in Cage Warriors and won the featherweight title in Cage Warriors, stuff like that. So he looked really big. He's sort of like Michael Chandler's he's short, but he's stacked. And Paddy looked big against him. So he looked great. Paddy could have done no more than he did. He looked absolutely fantastic. Can you feel the butt coming on?
Are you going to say people need to calm a little?
Because let's look at the competition. Like for me, Michael Chandler is done. I remember us talking about this fight one of the last episodes I did when I was in Australia. We were talking about Paddy versus Chandler. And you were saying to me, oh, like Paddy v Chandler, how do you think he goes? I was like, Paddy smashes him. And you were like, really? How? I was like, any way he wants to. I do believe after the Charles Oliveira fight, seeing Chandler get taken down and dominated as much on the ground, Paddy could do that to him. And I said I felt Paddy could knock him out. And I felt like the response you gave me was you were quite surprised at my take. But I just feel like Chandler is not the Chandler he was in Bellator. He's not the Chandler he was maybe even in his UFC debut. And when we look at Chandler's run I'm going to have to pull it up just to back myself up here. But we look at Chandler's run. Michael Chandler beat Dan Hooker in his debut. Now, I don't think Michael Chandler beats Dan Hooker now.
No, I agree.
I think Dan Hooker now beats Michael Chandler. So he beat Dan Hooker, and Dan Hooker was terrified of the takedown. That fight, you remember, Dan Hooker was skirting around the cage, trying to stop the takedown, and he got clipped with an overhand right. We've never really seen Chandler do much wrestling in the UFC. He's been all about fun fights, striking, all that stuff. Had Dan Hooker gone into that fight knowing Chandler's game plan would be to strike with him, very different outcome for me. Then he loses to Charles Oliveira in a great fight. I mean, Chandler was seconds away, or maybe a different decision away from winning the belt in their first fight. And then Charles came back in the second round. It was all over. That was a brilliant showing from Chandler. It was a great fight against a top opponent. Loses to Gaethje, beats Tony Ferguson in a fight where I vaguely remember the first round. Tony maybe won that first round, or at least did very, very well at a time where Tony, we were all going, oh, I don't think Tony's
he looked
there
really good
anymore.
in that first round.
And then Chandler hits him with a front kick. When has he ever done that? Hits him with a front kick out of nowhere. Lost to Poirier. Again, no shame in losing to Gaethje and Poirier. Top fighters. Loses Charles Oliveira again in that second fight they had. That second fight they had, Charles Oliveira dominated him. The moments where we went, oh, look what Chandler's doing, is when Oliveira was on his back and he just stood up and slammed himself backwards. So that's not great offense. It's fun to look at. It's not great offense. And then the fight to Paddy where he got absolutely smashed. Now, I don't want to take anything away from Paddy. I want to see Paddy challenging the top guys. I really, really think Paddy deserves it. He's on a great win streak. Yes, maybe you could argue the UFC have matched him favorably. Probably, yes. But I do think that let's put everything in perspective. And for me, going into this fight, Paddy was a big favourite for me. I know not everyone had it that way, but for me, he was. So I don't want to sort of get too over our skis, if that's the phrase with this. I think we need to just pump the brakes a tiny bit.
I think if we look at it, I think it's safe to say, right, that as much as we saw maybe a depleting Michael Chandler, we also saw an improving Paddy Pimblett.
That's absolutely fair, yes.
And I think I know there was talk of, post-fight mention Gaethje and did he mention Oliveira? I can't remember.
Who, Paddy?
Yeah.
Paddy did the right thing, man. His call-outs were good. He was like, I think he's basically said he'll take on Gaethje. He'll take on the fight he wants is Oliveira, which is, I want to see that fight. He also mentioned the posh boy Arman. I'm less interested in that fight. I think that's a tougher fight for him. But yeah, Paddy did everything right. He did the build-up right. He smashed him in the fight. And then he did the call-outs right. Like, I've got no criticism of Paddy at all. I don't want anyone to think that I'm hating on Paddy. I've got zero criticism of Paddy at all. He did everything right. I'm really looking forward to what happens next with his next fight against a really good opponent. But I just don't think we need to put huge amounts of stock. Yes, it's probably Paddy's best performance yet, but it's Michael Chandler at this stage in his career. I don't believe Michael Chandler. Like, let's just run down the lightweight rankings. You tell me when I come to someone that you think Chandler beats now, or that you think Chandler is a better win than now in terms of talent, not in terms of name value. Obviously, Islam, Arman Sarukian, Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier, Dan Hooker, Mateus Gamrot, Paddy's then there, Beneil Dariush, Renato Moicano, Rafael Fiziev, then we got Chandler, Benoit Saint-Denis, Grant Dawson, Joel Alvarez. You haven't stopped me once.
I think he'd have a fun fight with Moicano.
Yeah, but again, this is not me saying that Paddy couldn't beat these people. That's not the point I'm trying to make.
Sorry,
the
Paddy,
point I'm trying to make
about.
is no. The point I'm trying to make is that I don't think Chandler is better than any of the guys I just mentioned. And
I
I
don't disagree with you.
I don't think there's a person on the list I just mentioned who I would think less of. I'm trying to think how to articulate this, but like a win over Chandler to me doesn't mean as much as if Paddy went out and beat Benoit Saint-Denis or Rafael Fiziev or Renato Moicano or Benil Dariush, or like if Paddy did to Michael Chandler if Paddy did to Mateusz Gamrot what he did to Michael Chandler, I would be losing my mind. I'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe he did that to Gamrot. To stop Gamrot in 3 rounds and dominate him the way he did, to have Gamrot running away from him at points, that would mean more to me than doing it to Michael Chandler.
Right.
And that's sort of the point I'm trying to make, is that I don't feel like
I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm trying to say. Maybe I'm not articulating myself properly, but I don't want anyone to get it twisted that I'm like trying to take away from Paddy. I'm not. Maybe it seems like I am, but I'm not trying to take away from Paddy. I think it's Paddy's best performance to date. I thought he looked fantastic. And out of that performance, I go, oh, I do really want to see you fight someone in the top 5 now. I want to see
This is what we should do, because what we don't want, and I think the UFC have chose favourably his matchups. I do believe so, because they know he's one of the biggest stars in the sport now. And I don't think they've strapped a rocket to him like they did Darren Till. And I like that. I think they're utilising his career. They're planning his career nicely, because there's a lot of money to be made with Paddy, and they're obviously very wise to that. I do think now, I've just said they've not strapped a rocket to him, but I think after that fight, his stock's gone through the roof, right? He's a superstar now. Like, I would not be surprised. Obviously, they've recently just announced that Poirier's farewell fight is going to be for the BMF against Max. Great, we'll talk about that on another show. But so that does... I think Paddy is a bigger star than Sarukian, right? A much bigger star.
Oh, stardom wise and fanfare. You're right, so absolutely.
I'm curious to see what the UFC is going to do next. I don't think they're going to give him Dan Hooker. Like, I do think the Dan Hooker is a winnable fight for Paddy. I think it's a fun fight, but I think they're going to look at Justin Gaethje. I really do. I think that could be the fight they're going to make it for him.
I think it might be Charles Oliveira.
Do you think so?
I think maybe. So, I mean, do you know what I think is a huge factor in all of this?
Belal
versus JDM.
Yeah,
that is a massive factor in all of this. Once we know what happens, I'm going to favour Belal in that fight. But if JDM beats Belal, Islam's moving up. Yeah. And Islam's probably getting the next shot. It'd be a shame for Shavkat. Shavkat's earned it and he deserves it. He should be getting it now, but he's injured. But I think Islam would moving up if JDM beats Belal. And then all of a sudden, I think you might be looking at something like Charles Oliveira versus Paddy Pimblett for the vacant belt or interim belt, however they want to play it. I definitely think Sarukian has earned the shot, but to mess up a card with like 3 hours to go or whatever it was.
They've made it clear they're going to punish him.
Yeah, that's just how it's going to work. So Sarukian needs a win.
So you're saying...
I think Pimblett versus Oliveira is a great fight as well.
Yeah.
It's because it's kind of chaotic with the striking, both great jiu-jitsu on the ground. Like, wherever that fight goes, I'm really interested.
Yeah,
I'm really interested in seeing it. And I actually think, and maybe this sounds like I'm contradicting myself from what I said earlier, I actually think Paddy's got a good shot of winning that fight. Like, maybe I'd lean Oliveira just for the experience and what we've seen of him and all that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't be totally shocked if Paddy beat Charles Oliveira. And then you're like, holy shit. And maybe that is me getting over my skis. You know, we're talking about Charles Oliveira here and Paddy beating him and stuff like that. So in a weird way, maybe I am slightly contradicting myself in that I don't put huge amounts of stock in beating Michael Chandler in this day and age, but I do think he looked phenomenal at the same time.
Yeah.
Both things can be true.
You can only
so
beat what's
yeah.
in front of you and look as good as you can possibly do whilst doing that. And that's what he done.
100%. And that is what he done. Here's something to throw at you. Because of the result of that fight, are you more or less interested in the idea of Conor coming back and fighting Michael Chandler?
I just couldn't give a shit.
Yeah,
I
fair
couldn't
enough.
give a shit. I'm not going to even entertain Conor. I know he made rumblings about it. I don't even want to talk about it because he's not in the testing pool. And yeah.
Can you imagine if he was?
Do you know what I mean?
We got Conor somewhere. Oh, God. The lab's exploded.
It'd just be pissing it. It'd look like he'd just eaten like 3 fucking tubes of Baroccas. It'd just be like...
We don't know what he's on, but who knows? He doesn't look like he's massively sober at times, does it?
I don't think we need to consider that. I know there was a little bit of chat about Paddy fighting him, and obviously he put money on Chandler, but let's not talk about Conor. We've got too much to talk about. We want to talk about the nicest guy in MMA. We want to talk about Alexander Volkanovski. Now, I'll level with you, Blake. This fight couldn't have gone any more. It could have gone one way better, but basically, it went the distance. Neither of them were particularly seriously hurt in any way. Lopez, his stock's gone up. He was just a fantastic professional. Even though there was that weird thing we owe here, but let's not go into that. Volk looked fantastic. Won the belt. The only thing I would have liked was him then to have took his gloves off and gone, "Thank you."
No, that's crazy.
Yeah. No, it's not.
No.
Because he's
just won the belt back. And
I
the
know.
only times he's looked bad is when he got knocked out on 12 days' notice by the pound-for-pound best fighter on the planet. No shame in that. And then he got absolutely smashed by Ilia Topuria, who could be just an absolute legend in the making. I mean, Ilia Topuria does look phenomenal at the moment.
And also, what I will say, podcasters,
yeah, no shame in that.
If you're not a fan of Joe Rogan's podcast, then I would suggest dip into his interview with Ilia Topuria because it is really interesting. And Ilia's English is fantastic now. And you really get an insight into who he is. It's a really good listen. And
I haven't actually heard that, so maybe
really
I'll
good,
have to listen
really
to that.
good.
But yeah, no, look, you can't tell. Volk's just shut down Diego Lopez. Is Diego Lopez the top 2 featherweight on the planet? Probably not. No, but he was a great contender, a worthy title challenger. Movsar Evloev's probably more worthy, but I think there's no way you're hanging up the gloves after that if you're Volk. And to be honest, I think Volk looked fantastic in that fight.
He did. Absolutely.
So why are you hanging up the gloves? I mean, let's go through the rankings because it's my favorite game to do. Go through the rankings. Like Max Holloway's ranked 1 at featherweight. I don't know why, because he's moving up to lightweight, but whatever. Diego Lopez is ranked 2. Ilia Topuria is ranked 3 at featherweight. Why? That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Why is Ilia Topuria ranked 3rd at featherweight? He said he's moving up to lightweight and he was the champ. If you're going to keep him in there, he's got to be number 1. That is so weird. I've never seen that.
That is very odd. Why is Max ranked higher than him?
That's so weird. He smashed him. That's so weird. Who does these rankings? That is such a weird move.
Yeah.
But look, I think Movsar Evloev is the next guy up. And rightfully so. He's on a win streak. I mean, I know we've got the caveat of he didn't beat Arnold Allen in our eyes, but he's got the W next to his name, so you have to just go along with it. I don't know that Movsar Evloev is like, I don't know. I think that fight's a good fight. I'm not looking at that fight and going, oh God, poor Volk. Oh, I don't want to sit like if he was fighting Topuria
you think that's
again,
the fight they're going to make?
I don't know what else there is.
I think Yair's in the mix.
Nah, he's not in the mix.
You don't think so?
Nah. I mean, I have to say, I preface this with, I didn't see the Pitbull fight, and I still haven't seen the Pitbull fight. I know that's bad.
It's not a good start for Pitbull. Yair looked great.
No.
Yair looked really good.
But
Pitbull looked
Volkanovski
like
smashed Yair only like a couple of years ago or whatever it was. Like, and Yair's on a 1-fight win streak because he got beat. Didn't he get beat by Ortega in his fight previous or something? So why are you giving Yair a title shot against the guy who already absolutely smashed him?
Yeah, none of this makes sense. Do you know what? Let's just give Lerone Murphy the shot. That makes a lot of sense.
No, I don't see. For me, to give Yair the title shot would be criminal. That's absolutely ridiculous. You have to give it to Mobzar. You have to. You have to give it to Mobzar. And if he becomes champ, he becomes champ, and you just see what happens after that. There's certainly some fun fights to be had with Diego Lopez again. If Mobzar gets the belt, there's Yair. Hopefully Arnold Allen gets a win or two under his belts. Lerone Murphy's creeping up those rankings. He's 8th now. There's certainly some interesting fights to be had there. I think, though, I could see Volkanovski beating Mobzar.
Okay.
So there's no way you're hanging up the gloves.
I just don't ever want to go through the thought of seeing Volk ever lose again. I can't deal with it, Blake.
It's going to happen. It is. Father Time waits for no one, although it seems to be maybe waiting a little bit for Volk. He's missed the bus. But good, as long may that continue. I love seeing Volk in this position.
Oh, mate,
we know he's a fighting champ as well. There's no one that represents the UFC much better at all than Alexander Volkanovski. He's a fun guy. He's having a laugh. He's not offensive or horrible to anyone. He seems like a really lovely bloke. We've had him on the show a couple times. We can confirm he is a really nice bloke. Family man as well. And he's a fighting champion. He's not sitting out for 9 months with the title wrapped around his waist going, I'm just going to chill for a while. He usually fights every 3-4 months. He's active.
Can I segue from this with a tenuous link?
Please do.
Active fighters. Let's discuss Ian Garry.
Yes, let's discuss Ian Garry. Great win. Just to get the win over. He's not really a prospect, Prates, because he's a bit old. He's older than Garry, I think.
Yeah, but I think he's been on he's really popped into the, into the world of MMA now, where people are discussing him a lot as like, okay, this guy's a problem, and we saw Ian Garry get a very convincing 49, 46, 48, 47, 48, 47 win over him, and I thought it was.
I scored it. No, I scored it 48-47 Garry. I basically gave Garry the first 3 rounds and Prates the last 2 rounds. I have heard rumblings out there of people scoring it a draw because they scored the 5th round at 10-8 to Prates.
Because of that tear at the end.
Yeah.
He
did. He looked in trouble, didn't he, Garry? In that 5th round, he looked in trouble.
He did.
I mean, I can't say I didn't score it that way, but equally, I'm not going to argue with people that did too much. So I can see how you could get to that scoring. I can actually more see 40, what would it be? 48. I can more see 48-48 than I can 49-46.
Okay. Right.
Because I don't see how you give Garry round 5 or 4.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I thought he looked fantastic, and I also thought he showcased really good resilience towards the end.
Yes.
And people shouldn't focus on that. Like, I read a bit of stuff from Charles Sonnen saying he thought that threat at the end that people are talking about has been overplayed and overstated. Like, he thought he dealt with it really well, and I thought he did.
Yeah, I thought he dealt with it really well, but he was also in big trouble.
Yeah,
and I think for me, as much as you can go, wow, Garry did really well there, credit to him for surviving. There's another part of you that has to go, well, yes, Prates is good, but he's ranked like 13th. I can't remember who Prates' best win was against outside of the fight with Garry. He's, you know, he's nowhere near a belt. And,
I mean,
Garry was lucky to survive that 5th round.
Well, I've got to be honest. I think Ian Garry's the real deal. I really do. And I think, you know, we saw him. I don't think people are queuing up to fight Prates. I don't think, you know, and he took that fight on short notice. I don't think anybody wanted to fight Shavkat. He took that fight and put in a fantastic performance against Shavkat. He's now announced at the end of the fight that he's the backup fighter for Bilal Jack Della.
Dana White confirmed that as well.
Okay. I don't think. I mean, what do you think's next for him? I mean, because there's Jeff.
I
Neal,
don't see how he's the backup fighter.
like,
He looked like he was a bit mashed up after that fight. Like, I like the fight for the belt is in 2 weeks. How's he the backup fighter when they were talking on the commentary about some swelling in his forearm? His face looked a bit mashed up. Like, I don't know how you medically clear him to fight again in 2 weeks. And I think if Garry goes, imagine if Garry goes ahead and does this and he becomes a backup fighter and Jack Della pulls out injured with like 2 days to go. Like, good on Ian Garry for being game. I'm sure he will be. He'll step in there on 2 days' notice and fight Bilal Muhammad after having fought just 2 weeks ago. And again, in a hard-fought 5-round fight. Do you really want to see Ian Garry get a title shot against Bilal Muhammad on a couple of days' notice, having just had that fight with Prates? I don't. That's the last thing I want to see, because I feel like you'd get Garry at about 50% and he'd probably lose. And then when does he get back to a title shot? I don't know, because
I hear what you're saying. I
don't want to see it. I want to. If he wants to go there and risk it and get a bit of money, I really hope that no one gets injured and he can just have a little bit of money for weighing in, and that's it.
Look, let's look at what he's. Let's presume, and fingers crossed, everything goes as planned in the Bilal fight, and he fights Jack Della, because I think that's a really interesting fight. So we're left with ranked number 1 is Sean Brady. So I want to sort of see what you think is potentially next for Ian Garry. I know what I think. Shavkat, I'm presuming he's maybe still injured. I don't know. I've not really seen or heard anything about Shavkat. Leon Edwards, they've just announced, obviously, Kamaru Usman's going to be fighting Joaquin Buckley. Interesting. Then it's Jack Della, then it's Ian Garry, and then behind Buckley at 7 is Gilbert Burns and Colby Covington, and then Jeff Neal.
Burns is fighting Michael Morales,
of course, yeah. Morales is ranked 12th.
Which is a good fight.
Yeah, that's a fantastic fight. Obviously, Ian Garry was lined up to fight Jeff Neal at one point, wasn't he? And that never happened. And then Leon was meant to be.
Yeah, he was. But did he fight him in the end anyway? Like, didn't he fight? Or am I making that up?
Oh, I don't
Garry
know.
Neal.
Why am I just drawing a blank on that now?
No, let's have a little look. He definitely fought Neil Magny, didn't he?
Yeah. I didn't think he'd fought Jeff Neal.
Ian Garry, yeah, he beat Jeff Neal. Yeah, he had like a few fights early on that were okay. Then he got that massive head kick win over Daniel Rodriguez. Then he beat up Neil Magny, where he absolutely smashed him. Then he beat Jeff Neal in a split decision. I can't remember much about the fight, whether I thought it was a split or not. Then he had the grappling kind of fight against Michael Venom Page. And then the loss to Shavkat, where he still looked really great. And now the win over Prates.
Okay.
So for me, there's only one way to go.
Leon Edwards?
No, Sean Brady.
You think they'll give him Sean Brady?
I don't know. I mean, if I say there's only one way to go, I sort of forgot about Leon, if I'm perfectly honest. And maybe that fight does make a lot of sense. Who knows? but I think there's a bit of a logjam at welterweight. We've got JDM Bilal. If JDM wins, you know Islam's coming up. So that's another name that will leap over everyone. Shavkat has earned the title shot. He's there. And then underneath them, I feel like you have Sean Brady and Ian Garry.
Yeah.
They're the ones that have earned it the most. So, and Sean Brady right now is ranked number 1. And I think Sean Brady's not stupid. Even though he's ranked number 1, I think he knows that he's behind Shavkat. And if Islam comes up, he's going to be behind him.
There's bigger stars in that division than Sean Brady.
Yeah,
he's not got that. He's not got that clout as he is as a superstar.
No, and Sean Brady has called out Ian Garry on a few occasions. To me, let Ian Garry heal up a bit, maybe get round to, I don't know, maybe July or something like that, and then do Sean Brady versus Ian Garry in July, and the winner of that, their next fight is for the belt. Even if they have to wait a little while, their next fight should be for the belt. Leon Edwards, gosh, I don't know. With Leon, I do slightly worry for Leon, and I wonder if, like, for example, if Michael Morales beats Gilbert Burns in exciting fashion, could Leon be having to fight against Michael Morales or something like that? So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I do think Ian Garry, Sean Brady is a fight I'm really interested in, and I'm less interested in Sean Brady versus Leon Edwards now. Less interested in Ian Garry versus Leon Edwards now.
Yeah. Okay. Look, before we look ahead to Sandhagen Figgy that's going down this weekend, I just want to touch on the boxing that happened at the weekend, because
before we do that, could we touch on Anthony Smith?
Yeah, okay.
I think it's, I mean, obviously he was beaten pretty soundly and easy. But I just think, and there was that weird moment where he was sticking his middle finger up at a fan afterwards. But I don't know, it's weird. Anthony Smith's a bit of a weird one, and I kind of feel like he's retired, obviously, which is why I want to talk about him. But if I'm perfectly honest, when someone mentions Anthony Smith to me, the two things that immediately pop into my head are the situation with John Jones, where if he'd have said, I can't fight, he was the world champion. But he had that kind of, people want to call it warrior spirit. Some people might call it stupidity. I don't know. However you want to call it, let's call it warrior spirit. He was never the champ, and John Jones retained his title. And Anthony Smith was then just Anthony Smith. The other thing that pops into my head is when Glover Teixeira absolutely beat the shit out of him, to the point where we were all saying, why is the corner not throwing in the towel?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that and thinking, Anthony Smith's had a very long career, and he looks like he's going to go on to be an analyst and a commentator potentially for the UFC. Seems like a company man. But my massive things or the first things that jump into my head are sort of slightly negatives. It's like him losing in different fashions, effectively. Yeah. And I wanted to just sort of self-correct that a little bit and give people a little bit of insight into Anthony Smith and how much of a Cinderella story that actually is. Okay. Like, he was, in his first 10 fights on the regional scene, 4-6. He was 4-6 in his first 10 fights. That's a guy who you think, oh, well, you're never getting out of the regional scene. And to be honest, you're going to call this a day soon and go and do something else. But his perseverance and the way that he just kept plugging away and plugging away and plugging away took him on a win streak that led him to the UFC. He had one fight in the UFC, lost. The UFC said, nah, you're not good enough. He went away again, was in Bellator for a little bit, regional scene for a little bit, fought his way back to the UFC, and then stayed there and gave himself a situation. He was 23-11 when he just first cemented himself as a UFC fighter. He was 23-11 when his first fight was, when he had his second fight in the UFC that would go on to become his UFC career. And he's now after all of that, after being 4-6 in his first 10 fights, and it's not like he was picked up by the UFC like nowadays on the Contender Series where you might be 4-0, 5-0, and take it into the Contender Series, and then you're fighting the best of the best. And he was just on the regional scene like 15 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it was, and he was 4-6. At that point, you're thinking, this guy's a nobody.
Yeah.
And then he goes on and fights for a UFC title. And not only that, but he has a long career in as a staple of the top 15 of the light heavyweight division. And not only that, he's now probably going to be a regular face on the UFC broadcast for the next 5 to 10 years. He's going to earn more money than most UFC fighters earn. And I just think this was never, ever a possibility for someone in Anthony Smith's position. You look at someone on Cage Warriors that's had 10 pro fights and you say, oh, they're 4-6. You're thinking, I have a few Cage Warriors fights, but no one's really bothered, are they? And Anthony Smith was that, but just in Nebraska. And he's gone on and had the career he's had. And I just think it's a sort of, I think it's a bit of a signal out there to any young fighters that are maybe struggling, starting off their careers, maybe things don't go their way, that if you keep plugging away, you keep turning up at the gym, you keep giving everything, and you just keep believing in yourself, I guess, then it's not saying that you're going to go on and be one of the greatest fighters ever. No one's saying you're necessarily even going to go on and fight for a belt, which he did. But you can make something of yourself and make yourself an important part of our sport for however long you do it for. And I just think, I say our sport, we're just fans, but we, as fans do, we say we and our whenever we're talking about our teams or our sport. And I don't know, I just think it's actually a slightly kind of heartwarming story, despite the fact that, he has got a lot of losses, and my immediate thoughts with Anthony Smith aren't positive ones. But it's actually quite a heartwarming story when you think about what he's achieved from where he was at.
Yeah.
You are so nonplussed. You couldn't give a shit. You're like, well, I don't give a fuck about Anthony Smith, mate.
Do you know what?
Well, I hope someone out there found that mildly inspiring
Well, do you know what?
Interesting.
You're
Because Stu Whiffin, with his silence and just the dead look in his eyes, has just completely squashed what was meant to be a lovely moment. But go on, Stu, talk about the boxing.
No, do you know what? That kind of pep talk you done for aspiring, fighters that are out there that might be on a losing streak. If you keep getting back in the gym and you apply yourself and you've got that, well, that's all amazing, and I completely endorse that. Unless you're fundamentally shit.
Then just stop.
Just stop.
Just stop.
Put your glasses back on.
The fighter was 0-10 listening to this, and he's been fighting on Cage Warriors Academy and different places across the UK. He's 0-10, and he was like, Blake's done it. Blake's motivated me. And then Stu's just come in and gone, but if you're shit, do worry about your brain and just fucking stop, mate. Just stop. Fair enough, Whiffin. Fair enough. Before we do get onto the boxing, I just want to say, has anyone found Michel Pereira? Because I didn't see him on Saturday night. What's happened to Michel Pereira? Did you see that fight against Abus Magomedov?
No.
Oh my God. Michel, it was like it was an episode of Quantum Leap. And that lead actor has gone into Michel Pereira's body for this one fight and doesn't know how to fight.
What?
And for Abus Magomedov, it was the worst Michel Pereira fight you've ever. It was like, imagine if say to Michel Pereira, who is one of the most exciting fighters in the UFC, is
one of the most flamboyant fighters.
He does backflips on people. How can you not love the man? And then it's like someone said to him before the fight, I triple dare you to do your best impression of Ngannou versus Lewis. That was him in the fight. He did nothing. It was so heartbreaking to watch as a huge Michel Pereira fan. I don't know what's happened to him. I don't know who swapped brains with him, but that wasn't Michel Pereira on Saturday night. And I really, really hope someone finds Michel Pereira quickly and reinserts him into his own body, because that was awful. And I couldn't believe what I was watching. Something must be up. Maybe by the time this is released, he's had an interview and said, oh, yeah, I had norovirus or whatever the hell he had wrong with him. Because that was so not a Michel Pereira performance. I was flabbergasted at the whole thing.
I hope he's all right.
Yeah, well, but also I hope you're all right, Michel Pereira.
Yeah.
Please do come back and backflip on someone, because that was just really sad to see.
Yeah, I know you're not a massive boxing fan, but did you watch the fight of the weekend?
No, I flicked on an app, my news app, and they had highlights, and I just watched a couple of highlights. But I heard it was a very good fight.
It was really good. It was really good, and I'm talking about Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. The lead up to it was really fun. I'm of an age where, you know, I grew up watching their dad's fight in, you know, what was a golden age of British middleweights, you know, with him, Steve Collins, Errol Bomber Graham, Michael Watson. There was just so many fantastic fights happening at that point. Michael Watson, did I mention Michael Watson?
You did?
Yeah. And it was just a fantastic time for British boxing, and just the narrative was always there. You know, there's a massive weight difference, and you know we've seen Chris Eubank Jr. go on and have fantastic fights with Callum Smith and with what's his name, the oh god, the Traveller lad. I can't think what his name is. Why has his name just escaped me? He was there at the weekend. Anyway, it was an absolute fantastic fight that lived up to all the hype. The narrative of Chris Eubank Sr. not being involved in it, and Nigel Benn being there by his side, by his boy's side throughout the whole of the camp and all the media, and then on the night, the limo pulls up, the door opens, Junior gets out, and then Senior gets out, and both dads walk their boys to the ring. It was fantastic. It was just a pure nostalgia hit for people in my generation and older. And then what we got was an absolute stormer, just toe to toe. You know, you saw the experience of Eubank Jr. Picking away at Conor with his with a fantastic jab, and you saw the eagerness in the younger Conor Benn that just was wild at times, but just like his dad was, you know, always dangerous, always throwing big shots. It just was a super exciting fight, and the last round was just both of them absolutely depleted with energy, but just did not stop throwing at each other. It was just fantastic. It reminded me just how fucking brilliant boxing can be when you get something that is as well put together as that fight. The whole thing, the whole show. We know that the UFC put on events and make them so exciting when you go and watch them. I've been to so many boxing fights and left feeling a little bit disappointed, but this one was just fantastic, and it just absolutely fired me up. And just speaking to everybody else that watched that fight of the weekend, everybody loved it. I'm sure there'll be a rematch, and I'm sure there'll be ridiculous money involved in it. There was obviously stuff regarding, you know, the rehydration clause, and which was.
I did see some of that. Chris Eubank Jr. looked really,
it was
like
worrying.
he was feeling that weight cut, and obviously he got fined as well, didn't he?
Yeah, and because they put a second weigh in, you know, 10 hours before the fight, so he couldn't rehydrate after the first weigh in, which was, I don't know. I thought that was a bit of an underhand move by Eddie Hearn protecting his lighter fighter, but
is it like, again, I don't know enough about the boxing thing, but I have to say there did look like quite a size discrepancy between the two of them.
Yeah.
So you can sort of understand that.
Well, you're looking at a welterweight versus a super middleweight.
Yeah, so something like that needed to be done, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. I think weighing a fighter again 10 hours before the fight, I just
And did he
worry
have to
about.
be the same weight or just higher?
Yeah. He couldn't weigh in any heavier than his initial weigh-in, so he had 10
Oh,
hours to
wow.
rehydrate. And I think having that lack of fluid in your body and around your brain, and then having a 12-round war like that, I worry about fighters' health. You know,
Yeah.
we've spoken enough about weight cuts on this, but I would, anybody that missed it, I think DAZN have put it up on YouTube. Now go and watch the fight, because it's a lot of fun, and it will kind of wet your whistle for whatever's next for both fighters. I think Conor Benn put in a fantastic performance, and
Do you think it's a rematch? Do you think there's a rematch?
I don't know. I think Eubank. I know there's been chat about Canelo. I think that could be interesting, but I think there's big money either way now. I think there's massive money in a rematch there. The whole story of the two
Yeah.
dads having them epic fights, and now their sons are fighting. It's
I saw the egg thing as well. That was like, but
that was
is
weird. That was
But
weird.
was that so? My understanding of the egg thing was that Ben popped for something that it turns out was that, or his excuse was, or these not even his excuse, but the people at the lab doing it saying, well, it could be just excess amount of eggs. It may not have been that you've popped for whatever. This could be because if you've had loads of eggs, it could be that. And Eubank Jr obviously thinks it's a load of bullshit, so he basically smashed him with an egg at the weigh-ins. That's my understanding, or not the weigh-ins, at like a press conference. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I believe so. Yeah, that was a while ago, and it escalated and escalated all the trash talk and that. And what I did really enjoy was, I don't know if you saw any of this. Every time Eddie Hearn went to talk, Chris Eubank Jr would just talk over him, and would just call him out for being a rat constantly, and it was really interesting to see, because he's so articulate, Eubank Jr. He wasn't just gobbing off. He was talking sense, and he was calling out Eddie Hearn as a promoter constantly. And I think boxing is an interesting sport, and there is some questionable decisions made, and I think sometimes these people that are at the top of the tree should get called out and be accountable for some of their actions. And so it just added to the madness and the media that was this fight. And I just wanted to mention it because it was just a really good scrap. I really enjoyed it.
No, good. Should we briefly talk about Sandhagen Figueiredo, because is that coming up this Saturday?
It's this Saturday, and it's actually not a bad card.
No, it's not a bad card. You've got Sandhagen Figueiredo. Let's start with that. I mean, I can't lie to you and say I've done any kind of deep dive on this. We just said that we would briefly mention it, and that's what we're doing now. Sandhagen, obviously one of my favourite fighters. I know you love him as well. We've had him on the show before. Really great guy. Talked about doing didn't he do like a psychology degree or something like that? And so he's an intelligent young man, but he's chosen to put his efforts into fighting. And for me, he's always been one of these guys that I feel like should be a world champion at some point, but he's just that last hurdle, whether it's a bad decision, like the TJ Dillashaw fight, he should have fought for the belt after that, because I think he won that fight.
I agree.
And TJ won it, and then TJ fought Aljo.
They're both coming off of losses then.
Well, Sandhagen is coming off of the loss to Umar Nurmagomedov in a fight that technically he got 50-45'd. However, every round was close.
Yeah.
But it's just every round did lean just to Umar. So, yes, it's a 50-45, but it wasn't an absolute battering or anything like that. It was a really tense, close fight. And his fight with Peter Yan as well was a fantastic fight. I'm trying to think, what was Figgy's last fight? Was that his loss to Peter Yan?
Was that Yan? Yeah.
I believe it was.
He lost to Yan in his last fight. I'm pretty sure of that.
Well, I'm going to look that up just to confirm that is the case in a second. But how do you see this fight going? What do you think's going to happen in this fight?
I think he's going to sort of refine his strategy a little bit, Sandhagen, and I think he's going to make a bit of a statement in this bout. I really do. Looking at his team now, I mean, his team now's involved Ryan Hall and Trevor Whitman. I think this...
Is he with Trevor Whitman now?
Yeah.
Oh, I
Like,
love that for him. I didn't know that.
yeah.
Sandhagen and Trevor Whitman is a great combo.
And yeah, I think he wants to sort of solidify himself now as as a legit sort of contender, and hopefully
Yeah.
get that shot. But I also think the Figgy, you know, yeah, we know that he was the flyweight champ, but I think he's also really trying to sort of prove himself as a bantamweight. I think like there's a statement to be made there as well. But for me, I think I think it makes for a really exciting fight, because I think they're both coming off losses. They're both trying to kind of really make a statement in this fight. But I think that we're going to see a vastly improved Corey Sandhagen.
What does the winner get?
Pull up the rankings. Oh. In the meantime, I'll pull
I'll
them
tell
up.
you what I think.
Go
I
for
think the winner might get the loser
it.
of Merab versus Sean
Sugar.
O'Malley. And I really, really want it to be Sandhagen versus Sean O'Malley. I really want to see
that's the
fight.
fight, man. That's the
I
fight.
want to see that fight, yeah.
Does Sugar deserve that rematch?
Probably not. I mean, yeah, what did he even defend? Yeah, he defended the belt against Chito Vera.
Yeah.
And then he lost it to Merab. So for me, no, he shouldn't have got an immediate rematch.
Petr Yan deserve it next?
Well, Jan's been so like he's won a couple now, hasn't he, Jan? But he was on a quite the losing streak, and he's lost to Sandhagen. He lost badly to Merab. Petr Yan, Merab is not a fight I want to see again.
Petr Yan, he's ranked above Umar and Corey.
I know. It's weird. I think Umar eventually will get to that title. But yeah, Jan's on a 2-fight win streak now after being on a 3-fight losing streak. So yeah, it's those guys at the top. A lot of them have fought each other.
We
So
know
it's,
that the UFC loves Sugar. He's a superstar,
Yeah.
and you can tell that that's where the money is. That's where the superstar is, and I'm sure, as we mentioned earlier when we talked about Paddy, the UFC wants some superstars with belts, because at the moment, there's not lots.
I mean, it's good for them that Volk's come back, because he's not a superstar, but he's a loved figure and he's a big name. So I think it's good that Volk's got the belt there. Although, I mean, Taporia before that was a star. Yeah, there's not many stars, are there? I'm just flicking through the champs now. There's not many. There isn't many. So I think, yeah, having Sean O'Malley have that bantamweight title would be really beneficial for the company.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. Does Sean O'Malley beat Merab?
No.
I don't know that he does. I don't know that he does. But I'm sort of interested in the rematch. But I do think Merab wins it.
Just to run through another few fights going down this weekend. Bornickel is fighting Derrida.
Did you just purposefully call him Bornickel? I think that's a good fight, because Reinier Derrida is a good grappler and
one championship double champ, mate.
One championship. This is the biggest test Bornickel has had. I'm really interested in actually seeing this fight. I think this is a really good fight, and I think if Bo wins this, I really want to see him thrown up there now. I've had enough of the he's this, he's that, American, Penn State wrestling, blah, 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 blah. I want to see him thrown in there. If he beats Reinier Derrida, then throw him in there. Ponzinibbio versus Daniel Rodriguez. No, there's nothing massively at stake except for a second paycheck for these people, but that should be a fun fight.
At least a couple of seasoned strikers. I think we're going to get something good from that.
I think that fight could be a really fun fight. So don't take your eyes off of that one. Misha Tate is back fighting Yana Santos.
Prelims. Yep.
Yeah, previously Yanis Kunitskaya. So it's always interesting to see Misha Tate back. And then a fight that you mentioned you were quite excited about a while ago was the return of Mason Jones and the return of Jeremy Stevens fighting each other. How do you feel about that one then?
I mean, former guest of the show, Mason Jones, got cut from the UFC, went back to Cage Warriors, put in some fantastic performances over there, and then has found himself back in the UFC. And look, this is an opportunity for Mason Jones to get eyes on him, because Jeremy Stephens is a fan favourite, and it's probably the biggest name in regards to sort of profile that Mason Jones has fought.
Well, he's just had a huge moment, hasn't he, Jeremy Stephens, by knocking out Eddie Alvarez in BKFC.
Of course, oh God, of course, yeah. So
this is Jeremy Stephens' time back. He's been out boxing and doing BKFC and a bit of PFL and all that kind of stuff, and now he's probably one of the most popular he's ever been, or the most popular he's ever been. So to beat Jeremy Stephens here and now would be good. I can imagine there being a size difference. Mason Jones is someone that has fought a welterweight before, wasn't he? Cage Warriors lightweight and welterweight champion, Mason Jones. And Jeremy Stephens used to be a featherweight. So I can see there being a big size discrepancy here, but
hopefully that benefits the Welshman, and it it kickstarts a nice tear in his second go at the UFC.
Absolutely. I'm trying to think if there's anything else of note on that card. Marina Rodriguez versus Gillian Robertson. I really like Gillian Robertson, and I used to be a big fan of Marina Rodriguez, but she's come up short a few times. Gillian Robertson is on a 4-fight win streak at strawweight. So, 3-fight win streak at strawweight. One of those is a karate combat grappling match. So yeah. If she gets a win there, I'm not sure how high she'll climb up the rankings, but looking good. And Marina Rodriguez is 1-4 in her last 5 fights. So she's certainly not got anywhere near the momentum that Gillian Roberts has at the moment. So we'll have to see. But Gillian Robertson with a win should move into the top 10. And, Zhang Weili, for as long as she stays at strawweight, she needs contenders, and maybe Gillian Robertson can find herself in a fortunate position sometime soon.
Absolutely,
that is basically it, right?
Absolutely. I think as far as the fight night goes, this weekend's a really good one. I think it's
fight nights go.
And we'll be back next week, probably to discuss a little bit of that and to look ahead to. We'll be looking ahead to Bilal, will we not?
Yeah, is that UFC 315, 315, I believe. Bilal Muhammad against Jack Della. I'm just trying now to pull up that card to see what else is on there. Oh, yeah, Shevchenko versus Manon Fiorot. That would be a really fun fight. Really interested to see if Fiorot can do well there. Grasso versus Natalia Silva. You got to think the winner of that might be getting into. I love Natalia Silva. Natalia Silva's so much fun to watch. She's got phenomenal striking. Weird booking of Jose Aldo again versus Ayman Zahabi. I mean, I hope Aldo wins, but I just want to see Aldo fighting legends and stuff.
Weird. Why are they doing it to him?
But I tell you what is an absolute banger. Benoit Saint-Denis versus Joel Alvarez. That will be a phenomenal fight. I cannot wait for that one. That could be a really, really good scrap. And then the rest of it is fine. Jessica Andrade is on the card. That's always good. Modestas Bukauskas, former guest of the show, is fighting Ion Cutelaba. He's going to get the old stare down, shout in his face.
Yeah.
So hopefully Modestas can deal with Ion Cutelaba.
Absolutely. Of course he can.
But yeah, that is it. So yeah, not an amazing pay-per-view card, but not a bad one.
Absolutely. We'll be back next week to discuss that in a little bit more depth and to bring you up to speed and round up with all the other information in the world of UFC and further afield. In the meantime, head over to Fat Candy and use that discount code SWEETMMA for some sweetie treats. And all that leaves me to say is lovely to see your pasty face again, Blake Harrison. Welcome back to the show.
Lovely to see you too, mate. And again, apologies to everyone that missed me in those 3 weeks, but big thank you to
we've just been inundated. So many people have just been like, we've literally had just floods and floods of emails of people just saying like how incredible Brian Lacey and Scroobius Pip were. Just said like no one. It was as if you weren't, you didn't even exist. Everyone's like, do you know what? Them guys were just like such a high level of professionalism. Like,
was that have the ratings gone up? Have they? Has the listenership has skyrocketed during my absence? Yeah.
Me, Brian Pitt are about to release our first podcast called The Triple Threat. We'll tell you more about that soon.
Who's the singer? Who's the dancer? Who's the actor? That's what I want to know. That's the triple threat I want to hear about.
We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.